We go. Tell me who you are and what you've been up to lately.
My name is Janet Weber. I live in Rockland County, New York, and the most recent activity was the Water Walk for Life, which was an 8-day, 90-mile walk from Carteret, New Jersey waterfront to Peekskill, New York. It was organized originally by Jun-san Yasuda, who's the director of the Grafton Peace Pagoda. She has been instrumental in organizing long-distance walks for many causes. This particular one was in response to the Pilgrim Pipeline threat, which is coming down from Albany, New York, into New Jersey. It's the same back and crude that comes from North Dakota, which is Standing Rock community has been fighting and still fighting in courts. The walk wound its way through Essex and Bergen County, and we made alliances with Food and Water Watch New Jersey, the Coalition Against Pilgrim Pipeline in New Jersey, 350.org New Jersey, Coalition Against Pilgrim Pipeline New York, the Green Party, and I've also been working with the Ramapo Lenape indigenous community in Mawa, and my relationship with them, bringing elders, indigenous elders for ceremony and teachings, enabled Jun-san to connect the water walk to that community, because the Ramapo, their original territory is this whole region, and from Connecticut to Pennsylvania, and they're just down to a very small area. But the Pilgrim Pipeline would come through their original territory, and we're not sure of the exact route yet, but it's possible that it would threaten one of their burial sites and their sacred sites, and the watershed of Rockland and Bergen County and further south. So these are the same issues that Standing Rock is facing, about pipelines threatening water supply for many, many people, millions of people, and the indigenous people making a stand. So they founded the Split Rock Prayer Camp, Split Rock Sweetwater Prayer Camp. Ramapo actually means sweet water in the Lenape language. And so the water walk halfway through went to the Split Rock prayer camp, and we had a ceremony with the Ramapo people. And then they walked across Rockland County for a few days, came to FOR, Fellowship of Reconciliation, then on to Stony Point, which were huge supporters of the walk. The walk took a break. They went down to Washington, D.C. on Friday. 2 van loads of people to stand with the people of Standing Rock and all indigenous nations for treaty rights, water rights, indigenous rights, which continually get totally dismissed in our country. It's quite criminal what has happened over the years. And the last day of the water walk was through Westchester County, and we also connected with the Resist Spectre group, the Coalition to Shut Down Indian Point, and Synergy and Nancy Vann's group. So we had, every night we had potluck and speakers talking about the issues, the local issues, and connecting them to the much larger national issues that are going on. And especially with indigenous people, these are global issues that are going on with the taking of their land, their resources. They're being pushed off their land, marginalized, and in South America, there's been quite a few indigenous activists who have been killed. They've been murdered. Now it's an opportunity for all of these organizations to form coalitions and alliances, because they're all going towards the same thing of water and clean air and climate change and so forth. So at the end of the walk, they had a vigil at Indian Point where they prayed because there was a large delegation of Buddhists in the walking group. Some people actually came from Japan, in particular a few people from Okinawa who are fighting the 71-year occupation of an American military base on their island, and it's continually expanding and ruining the environment. They're planning a big landfill to add more airstrips and so forth. So they came, and it was to the vigil at Indian Point was to commemorate the 6th anniversary of Fukushima. And they've been going there every year, and we left peace cranes at the gate and they drum and they say their prayer. And we ended our walk with a water ceremony. As we did the beginning of the walk, we started it with a water ceremony by Denise Waterman, who's from the Onondaga Nation. She did the opening ceremony in Carteret, New Jersey, and the closing water ceremony was by Grandmother Nancy Andre, who's of Algonquin heritage. And the ceremony that we had on the waterfront, it was pretty brisk. We had very strong winds that day. It was very cold. But the water is offered, and this ceremony comes from the Algonquin tradition. Grandma Nancy has many elders in Canada. She herself is an elder, but her elders really felt it was time for these ceremonies to be released to the public because we're in dire situation with our water all over the world. So they wanted to share this water ceremony and these songs for people to learn them and to use them in their community, wherever their reservoir is or their local river. So Grandma Nancy shares this ceremony now all over. She's been traveling quite a bit with it, and it comes from Grandfather William Commanda's community. He was the last hereditary Algonquin chief. And so Nancy was gifted this ceremony in 2004, and she's been traveling doing this ceremony. And with our new, we're building relationships with the Ramapo community. Grandma Nancy and some of the Ramapo clan mothers were in conversation about starting to have teachings and trainings at the Ramapo prayer camp, Split Rock Prayer Camp in Maua, to share these teachings with the public. Anyone's welcome to come.
Can you describe the water ceremony?
The water ceremony starts with, sometimes we take water from the actual water body, but if we can't get to it, like it was a little tricky on the Hudson because the rocks were very icy because it was very cold. So Nancy brought water. And the water is offered to the four directions, north, south, east, and west, and then above and below. And there's a song that's sung with it, and then the water is poured to the ground with each of the directions, and the song is repeated with each of the directions. So it's like a blessing for the water, and some people may be familiar with Dr. Emoto from Japan, who did these experiments with water. People sat around it, and they sent anger and, upset, thoughts and feelings to the water, and actually changed the crystalline structure. With water that actually had the label love taped on it, or people prayed over it, or they thought of holy people. The water crystals were perfect geometry, so that our thoughts, emotions, vibrations, music, all of this stuff affects the crystal structure of water. We're made of water, and that also our water sources now, because they go through pipes and stuff, it's linear. It doesn't go meandering through the streams like it used to do, and to get that natural spin on it, which also creates different water structure. And that water, like spring water, it tastes different because it's alive and it's got a different composition. It tastes silky, and regular pipe water, it's kind of dead because it is dead structurally. So there's a lot of experiments going on around the world with water, with praying for water. There's been indigenous grandmothers who have walked the entire perimeter of the Great Lakes carrying water and doing prayers to honor this resource, which is critical for all life, and what indigenous people would call first medicine. And because they use it for all their ceremonies, just as Christians would use it in baptism, that would be very important to have clean water and not fracked water, for example. So,
thank you. That's very helpful. Let me just ask you one simple question, because I know there are people who'll be seeing this video that will say, "What do they hope to gain by walking?"
Well,
start with what we hope to gain, or give that.
What we hope to gain. What we hope to gain is to raise awareness about water and pipelines, the risk to water and watersheds from pipelines, because all pipeline leaks. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And there have been hundreds and hundreds of pipeline leaks in the last couple of years alone. And many communities' water sources have been irreversibly damaged. So to raise the awareness that your water may be damaged, is at risk in the region that we walk through, millions of people's water, they need to know about this. And if they do know that their water is at risk by these pipeline projects, perhaps they would join local organizations to resist the pipelines, to pressure their politicians, to take a stand, to speak up, to educate their neighbors. It's really quite amazing how many people don't know about these major things that are affecting their communities and their families. So one is just awareness, but also energetically putting prayer out is also beneficial, is kind of a quantum physics effect if you want to get scientific about the effects of prayer. You don't have to pray coming on a water walk. You can just have good thoughts and create community. So,
Very important thing, creating community. Well, part of the community that was here today was not your peace walkers or your water walkers. It was more of a nuclear community. After hearing what you heard today, what are your first thoughts, and what do we do from here? Tell me some of your reactions to what you heard today.
I think the most troubling thing that I learned was that the nuclear industry doesn't seem to have much of a concern for the future responsibility of the mess that they leave behind. And the speaker said it's up to communities to protect their region from the nuclear waste that's left behind. And I thought, well, if they're only allocating certain hundreds of millions of dollars for decommissioning, where's the rest of the money going to come from? And apparently there's a tax on the table in New York State that's going to subsidize, it'll be attached to your electricity bill. It's called, they're calling it the Cuomo tax, and it's called Article 78, is it? Article 78, where I think it's $7.2 billion is going to go to the nuclear industry to subsidize the continued operation of nuclear plants, where only $2.4 billion is going towards renewable energy. Now I thought, why don't they take that $7.8 billion and put it towards decommissioning? And I think people would be a lot happier if their increased electricity bill was going towards creating more safer solutions for the nuclear industry rather than having it continue and still reaching this dead end in 12 years. So that was very troubling that there seems to be no one watching the flock of spent rods, you know, and he was also talking about the aging out of technicians as they retire from the nuclear industry. Who's going to have the understanding and the caretaking of this nuclear waste? That was hair-raising for me. And again, also, I think a large portion of the community don't really understand the ramifications of the spent fuel at Indian Point. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, especially for people on the west side of the Hudson. You know, Westchester's living with it and sees the road signs, but in Rockland, I've met many people who just don't even give Indian Point a thought, which is pretty alarming.
Well, you've been doing some local organizing lately. Do you have any points that you'd like to make to those local organizers? Do you want to give them a tool now of perhaps a video with some organizing tips, things that you would like for them to do, or things that they might be able to take and show others?
Yeah, recently in Rockland County, an organization was launched called the Rockland Citizens Action Network. And first meeting just a month ago, we had 70 people. The second meeting, we had 80 people. It was a town hall with Senator Carlucci, who was a quite vigorous meeting. And he said he would come back and speak with us again. But the committee, the coalition has subcommittees, and one of them is an environmental committee, and I'm on that committee. And I did share with them information about the water walk, and you know that we're networking with these other community groups. So we have another meeting coming up on Thursday, and I'm going to tell them about all the groups going on in Westchester in relation to Indian Point, and also this Cuomo tax with the nuclear bailout attached to our electrical bill, and to see what the group consensus is of what we can move forward on, because we're brand new and we need goals and targets and some kind of plan to map out what needs to be addressed in our community. And the best thing is really to build coalition with other groups.
Thank you for being here. It's useful. Thank you.